Chapter 19. An Icy Trade. The soldiers shivered in the freezing winds. The elements had grown too harsh for the soldiers, so they were left behind, and the soldiers were forced to trek through the thick snow on foot. For hours and hours, they climbed higher and higher to the steep mountains of the north without a disclosed destination or an anticipated time of arrival. How much farther? General Marcus demanded. Once we see the lights, we'll know we've arrived, the masked man called to the men behind him. A unit that started as 20, the Grand Army soldiers had been reduced to less than a dozen. The soldiers were dropping like flies as the masked man led them through the cold. Every few hundred yards, a soldier would faint from the elements and disappear into the snow. They were ordered to keep moving, and the fallen were left behind. General Marcus and Colonel Benton wore thick coats over their uniforms as they traveled. Although the withering soldiers behind them were given very little to shield themselves from the cold with, they were scolded for slowing the expedition down. The masked man had only been given a raggedy old blanket to stay warm, but he still moved more agilely than the rest of them. He had braved these mountains many times before. You lot certainly don't handle the cold very well, the masked man chuckled. I'm starting to lose my patience, the general threatened. Don't fret, General, we're almost there, the masked man assured him. Soon the northern lights he had described came into view. They illuminated the dark sky in bright shades of green and circled above the glaciers ahead. By the time they reached the glaciers, the unit had been reduced to 6 men, including the general and Colonel Benton. The masked man led the remaining men through the opening between 2 glaciers and an enormous maze. They zigzagged between the glaciers and eventually stepped into a wider glacier. Gentlemen, welcome to the Snow Queen's lair, the masked man announced. The soldiers gazed around the crater in bewilderment. Several pillars of ice surrounded the crater. A frozen lake acted as its floor, and a frozen waterfall spilled inside from the mountains above and flowed around the giant icy throne. The Snow Queen sat on the throne with her faithful polar bears, one sat on either side of her. She wore a large white fur coat and a snowflake crown. A cloth was wrapped around her empty eye sockets. The Snow Queen and the polar bears were eerily quiet, as if they had been waiting for the soldiers to arrive. The masked man has returned again, the Snow Queen said in a raspy, crackling voice. We've been expecting you. Hello, Your Majesty, the masked man said, and gave a shallow bow. It's been a very long time, but you look as frigid as ever. Compliments will get you nowhere, the Snow Queen said. It's a trade you come to make. You know what I want to return. No, I understand, the masked man said. The last time I was here, you made it perfectly clear you wanted to exchange it for the item of interest. With great pleasure, I have returned with the means of finally making that trade. The general's silence grew very intense. You never said anything about a trade, he sneered. The masked man gestured for him to remain calm. Your Majesty, this is General Marquis of the Grand Army, he introduced. I know who he is, the Snow Queen said. I prophesied the general of his army entering this world long before you were born. Something about this was very unsettling to the general, and he motioned for his soldiers to stand alert, but the masked man assured him this is good news. Splendid, he said. Then you know what in exchange for the dragon egg he can provide you what you've always wanted. Capable he may be, but faithful to keeping his end of the bargain. I've yet to see, the Snow Queen said. The future is filled with many centuries and many uncertainties for the general. Long ago I foresaw him and his army sweeping across the land and conquering everything in his path. But I do not see him rise against the fairies. If he wished to claim this world, he need my trust in the deal we're about to make. And what exactly is the deal, the general asked, stepping closer to her. The Snow Queen smiled and her jagged teeth were exposed. Many years ago, I was the ruler of the Northern Kingdom until my throne was stolen from me. The general wants my dragon egg so he can conquer this world as intended. He must give me back the Northern Kingdom when he succeeds." This was news to the general and infuriated him. "Excuse me for a moment, your coldness," he said to the Snow Queen. He grabbed the masked man by the lapel and threw him against the pillar side of the cave. "You never mentioned about the trade," he whispered. "General, you have to trust me," the masked man whispered back. "This is the only way you can win this war. Make this trade with the Snow Queen, and it won't matter what she promised in return. Once you have a dragon in your power, you'll be unstoppable. You can obliterate her and anything in your way." The general thought it over, but the anger never left his eyes. "Very well," he said. He faced the Snow Queen. "If you supply me with the dragon egg now, when we take over, you have my word that the North shall be yours again." A deep and raspy celebratory laugh erupted out of the Snow Queen's mouth. "Music to my ears," she said. "Your offer is accepted when it comes with a warning. I foresee nothing but greatness for you if you keep your end of our bargain. But if you betray me, I foresee your quest ending with a scorching demise." The general's left eye started to twitch. Clearly, the Snow Queen was trying to trick him with visions he hadn't seen. He quickly glanced at the masked man, who silently urged him to proceed. "Understood," the general said. "We have a deal." The soldiers felt a rumble beneath them. They looked through the ice under their feet and saw bubbles appear as something large and round slowly floated toward them from the depths of the lake. A dragon egg surfaced and bobbed against the ice below the frozen lake. General Marquez turned to his men. "Don't just stand there, retrieve it," he said. The soldiers went to the dragon egg and beat the ice above it with the backs of their rifles. The ice began to break, and General Marquez and Colonel Benton stood away from it. One of the soldiers fell through the cracking ice into the freezing water underneath. The Snow Queen laughed wildly, amused by their attempts to get the egg. The man's fall created a huge hole in the ice, and the dragon egg soon drifted to it and floated to reach in distance. "No one move!" the masked man yelled, and the two remaining soldiers stood still. He carefully got to his hands and knees and slid across the icy floor and pulled the dragon egg out of the water. "Cold, cold!" he shrieked. He juggled the egg back and forth between his hands and wrapped it to his raggedy blanket. The egg was so cold his hands burned from its touch. The dragon egg was twice the size of the masked man's head. It was the shape of a regular egg, but was covered with a black shell with the same rough texture as coal. Cracks the egg and head received over the years were covered in gold to preserve it, like a rotting tooth. The masked man stared down proudly at the egg, as if it were holding his firstborn child. He had dreamed about this moment for a very long time. General Marquez promptly approached him and took the egg out of his hands. "Wonderful," he said, and stared down at the egg with wide, inquisitive eyes, as if he were looking into the crystal ball of his future. "Colonel Benton, please shoot the masked man. His services are no longer needed." Colonel Benton retrieved a pistol from inside his coat and aimed at the masked man. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," the masked man said, and raised his hands. "You can't kill me. You still need me. We have acquired the egg and will not waste another moment of your nonsense," the general said, and nodded for the colonel to fire it well. "But someone's got to take care of the egg, and I doubt you or any of your men know how to properly hatch and raise a dragon," the masked man said. "And what makes you an expert?" the general said spitefully. "I spent years trying to get my hands on this egg," the masked man said. "I know everything there is to know about dragons. Now we have to get the egg into something very hot. The hotter the environment, the faster and stronger the dragon will grow. And I have a very hot place in mind if we keep working together." A noise came out of General Marquez that was half a grunt and half a sigh. He had been looking forward to getting rid of the masked man since they left the prison, but now he would have to wait a little longer. He shook his head at Benton, and the pistol was put away. seems the masked man has proven himself useful again, the general said. You may stay alive long enough to properly hatch and raise the dragon for me. Now escort us to these icy mountains before you cause my irritation to trump my need for efficiency. General Marcus glared at him and then headed toward the opening in the crater that he had entered from. Colonel Batten and the remaining 2 soldiers followed him. The masked man rubbed his chest to calm his beating heart. He would have kept himself as useful as possible in the days ahead if he wanted to keep his life. Thank you, your chivalrous, the masked man said to the Snow Queen. He bowed and quickly caught up with the rest of the party. As soon as he and the soldiers were gone, another raspy laugh erupted from the snow. The Snow Queen and echoed through the canyon. What do you find so amusing, my grace? The polar bear on her left asked. A malicious smirk grew on the Snow Queen's face. I suddenly foresee something very certain in the forthcoming days of our masked man, she said. What does your highness see? The polar bear on the right asked. His mask has successfully concealed who he is for an impressive length of time, she said. But by the time the week is up, his worst fear will be realized when his identity is revealed to the person he most wishes to keep it secret from. Alright, that is the end of chapter 19. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more of the Land of Stories, a Grimm and more books to come. Also, if you want to hear more books and all that, don't forget to give me any recommendations below for more reading. But overall, I hope you enjoyed the reading and hope you had a wonderful day.